Well, hello there. I'm Barb Tessari, and welcome to my Drive-Thru Kitchen, a stress-free approach to shopping, cooking, and eating healthy. I thought I'd start out today's segment with an inspirational quote from one of the matriarchs of celebrity chefs, Julia Child. She said, "The only stumbling block to cooking is a fear of failure. You gotta go into it with a what the hell attitude." And that's so true. I mean, if you pull out a pan and turn on the stove, what's the worst that can happen? She also said something else that's very applicable to today's segment. She said, once you master cooking technique, you rarely have to rely on recipes again. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you simple cooking techniques for healthy dishes, so you'll never have to rely on recipes. So here's what we're going to learn today. 3 simple methods of cooking. I'm going to show you sautéing, grilling, and roasting. And I'm also going to show you how to make a basic pan sauce. Now, because the purpose of today is to walk you through the techniques, I'm going to use only 4 basic ingredients. Now, from the protein and vegetable category, I'm using these 2 skinless, boneless chicken breasts, some cooking oil, basic seasoning of salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and just a can of chicken broth. Now, the sauté method is done on the stove. You want to use a heavy bottom, flat surfaced, low-sided pan, and you want to make sure you have a matching lid for it. I'm going to start by just drizzling in a little bit of olive oil. Some recipes will say like 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. I always say just put enough in so that it covers the bottom of the pan so you have a nice oiled surface, okay? And while that's warming up, I'm going to season my chicken breasts. Just a little salt. I use kosher salt. Some cracked pepper. And just a little bit of garlic powder. I pretty much like garlic on everything. How much do I put on? I just sprinkle it. I try to go a little under because you can always add seasoning. It's harder to take it away. Now, the method of sautéing is just 2 simple steps, browning and simmering. And we're ready to start the browning process. We have our olive oil in the pan, and it's pretty hot. You kind of start smelling the oil a little bit, but you don't want it overly hot. And we're going to place our chicken breast in. You should hear a sizzle. Hear that? That means you got a good temperature going. And what we want to do is get that outside cooked pretty quickly. And I'm just going to quickly salt and pepper the other side, just a little bit. Now, what we're trying to achieve here is just a quick browning of the outside, both sides. And what that does is it kind of seals in the seasoning and it releases some of the chicken's great flavor. Okay, so what we're looking for is really a little bit of browning. You see that? It doesn't have to be totally brown, but you can see a little bit of brown marks. Ready to turn over. Okay, that's all we do. Turn it over and we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Okay, so now that we're browning the second side, let me talk about the next ingredient, which is our chicken broth. As I've said, chicken broth or any kind of broth is a staple in any healthy kitchen. It avoids having to use the high-calorie, high-fat butter and cream and cheese and provides a great flavor. Now, if you're cooking the second side, sometimes all the oil will absorb into the chicken. So if you look like the pan's a little too dry and you're worried about it scorching, take the chicken broth and just add a little tiny bit, just enough to keep that from scorching. Okay, so now our chicken is finished browning on both sides. So now we want to finish off the cooking process with simmering. And all I'm going to do is take the chicken broth. I'm going to pour just a little bit in just to cover the bottom. Doesn't have to be exact, just so it has a little bit of moisture. I'm going to turn my heat down because I want to cook it slower. I'm going to try to cook the meat on the inside all the way through it. I'm going to cover it, okay, because I want to keep the protein moist. General rule of thumb is that when you want to retain liquid, keep things moist, you want to cover a pan. When you want to evaporate liquid, you uncover the pan. Okay, so how long should we simmer our chicken? Well, since we're using individual serving size pieces. It's not going to take very long. And when you're following a recipe, let's say it says 7 minutes for each side. Well, if they say have a 1-inch pork loin chop they're referring to, but yours is only a 1/2 inch, well, yours is going to take a shorter amount of time to cook. So you really kind of need an estimated range. And in the Drive-Thru Kitchen guide, I provide you with estimated ranges for you to go by for everything from a shrimp to a cut of beef. I also provide you with the USDA temperature guidelines for various kinds of protein. Now we're working with poultry, and poultry needs to be cooked all the way through. And the easiest way to do it is just cut into it with a knife. Okay, so let's see if our chicken is done. It's going to cut right through the thickest part of the chicken. Oh, and look at that. The juices have run clear. See how nice and opaque that is? That's definitely done. So now it's ready to serve. Now for everyday meals, I just have everybody serve themselves from the pan. But if I'm going to make a sauce or a gravy, I do remove the chicken because I want to create the sauce or gravy in the same pan. And I'm going to show you how to make a basic pan sauce later on in the segment. Now grilling is almost the same process as sauteing, except of course you use a grill instead of a stove, and you want to turn the heat way up. So instead of browning on both sides, you're going to sear on both sides so that you can get those wonderful crusty caramelized grill marks we all love. Now the roasting method is like super easy. Of course it's done in the oven and it's great for both protein and vegetables. If you're cooking protein, you want to set your temperature at about 375. If you're cooking vegetables, a little bit higher, maybe 400 to 425. Now roasted vegetables are my absolute favorite. They are full of flavor and so easy to do. So I'm going to demonstrate to you just how easy preparing and roasting vegetables is. Now the preparation for protein and vegetables is about the same, and I'm going to demonstrate using some asparagus. And what I've done is just taken a cookie sheet, I've lined it with aluminum foil, that way I have no cleanup, and then I'm just going to place the asparagus, spread it out on the cookie sheet so that each one is touching the bottom. That's pretty good. All right, then I'm just going to drizzle just a little bit of olive oil, add my salt and pepper. I'm not even going to use garlic. Salt and pepper, they taste so good right on their own. And after you're done seasoning, all you got to do is pop it in the oven. Maybe about 5-10 minutes, shaking it once or twice. Okay, it's been about, I'd say 7-8 minutes, and they're ready to come out. And they're all done, and I just want to taste one. Oh my God, these are so delicious. And you think how easy it is. You can have them with grilled cheese. Now making a sauce or gravy is really very easy, at least the way I do it. Now remember we cooked the chicken earlier and I said don't wash the pan, keep the remains in the pan. Well, this is called the reserve, and it's where the most flavorful part of our sauce or gravy is going to come from. What we first want to do is we want to make sure we get all the little pieces that are stuck to the bottom of the pan to incorporate them into the liquid. This is called deglazing, and it's a very fancy term for an easy step. Now after deglazing, I'm going to take just about a cup of chicken broth, doesn't have to be exact, and I'm going to put about a tablespoon of flour. Now this is something you might want to measure at first because it's a little tricky. And then I'm going to dilute it. Now this is really important. Always dilute a thickener with cool liquid. If you add it to a hot pan, your gravy is going to be lumpy. Now I like to use quick mixing flour because it dilutes really easily and it's in this handy canister. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just pour the liquid in the pan, and I'm going to turn my heat way up, and I want to put it at a low boil, and I want to cook it for about 3 to 5 minutes. Again, keeping a low boil, stirring frequently. And what's going to happen as it cooks is the sauce is going to thicken, and that pasty flour taste is going to be removed. Water's going to evaporate a little bit, and we're going to end up intensifying the flavors for great gravy. Okay, so it's about 3 to 4 minutes later, and this is what I got. It's sort of a perfect consistency. And let me taste it. Wow, that's pretty good. Now, if it's not this exact consistency, maybe it's a little too thick, that's fine. Just put in some more chicken broth. If it's too thin, you can cook it a little bit longer because more water will evaporate, or you can just dilute a little more thickener with some chicken broth. Now that's the basic technique for making a sauce or gravy. Now you can change up the seasoning, you can add a little more liquid, or if you want to make a sauce instead of a gravy, instead of flour, just add cornstarch. It'll give it more of a silky sheen. But the point is that the process, the technique is all the same. So today we learned the basic techniques. In the Drive-Thru Kitchen Guide, there's a lot more tips in troubleshooting, as well as a handy reference chart in the back of the guide. Now next time, we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to whip up some of my favorite dishes from the guide using the ingredients and the techniques that we learned. So until next time, pull out a pan, turn on the stove, and put on a what the hell attitude. Visit my website at www.barbmotivates.com or email me anytime with questions or comments you have at barb@barbmotivates.com.